Can I tell you what's nuts to me? When Drake was putting out his most recent album, Iceman, there was like a big gathering outside the CN Tower where people were just really excited to get the new album. But here's the thing. I don't really necessarily think of the CN Tower as the cool place to be. I feel like there's an argument that Drake has made it a cool place to be. The CN Tower is turning 50 years old. It just turned 50 years old. So today on the show, we're going to have a big conversation about all the ways that the CN Tower has shown up in pop culture. Dalton Higgins is here, and Michael Barclay is here, and Niko Stratis is here, and I really love this conversation. I think you will too. Okay, so we're going to step into a time machine right now, if you guys don't mind. And if you were tuning into CBC 50-odd years ago, you would have heard this.
The CN Tower is already the highest structure in Toronto, rising about 850 feet above ground, and it's growing at the amazing rate of 16 feet a day. By mid-December, it will be a 1,500-foot concrete skyscraper. When a 305-foot communications mast is perched on top, it will become the world's tallest self-supporting structure.
Michael, I'm going to date you a little bit because you were alive when the CN Tower opened. You were a little kid at the time. You were like...
So was Dalton.
Okay, little kids at the time. But like, I'm wondering if you can just take us back in time for a moment. What was happening in Toronto in the mid-'70s that kind of made this massive project a thing that the city would even want to do? Like, what did it signify about the city?
Toronto was a really boring place for a long time. I think a lot of people can tell you, a lot of historians can tell you. And it had the inferiority complex, which still resonates somewhat today. Yeah. So this was really brought some big tower energy, shall we say, to the scene, big T energy. And it was like, there's literally a low bar. It was built to boost radio signals. And then you look at a postcard picture of Toronto in the 70s, you're like, really? Like, what was the competition? Like, what? I don't understand.
What was getting in the way? Yeah.
What was getting in the way? But it really... It boosted a lot of Canadian signals. We were getting a lot of American signals across Lake Ontario before that. But really, the mid-'70s to me is when Toronto totally comes into its own. It used to be a very sober society, and then you get a lot of draft dodgers from America. A lot of people I've written books about are children of draft dodgers. Then you'll also get the separatist government in Quebec being elected, so you get this influx of the cool Anglos from Quebec coming. And really bringing a lot of culture to Toronto. And then, of course, you have the waves of immigration that started in the 60s. You have queer culture coming up. You have Second City comedy coming up. You have punk rock coming on the scene.
What a soup you're talking about there. That's
Toronto Film Festival starts around the same time. They just turned 50 a couple years ago. So you've got like Cronenberg. You've got all these interesting things happening. And to me, the 70s is really underrated in terms of when Toronto comes into its own. And then on top of all that, you've got this giant, beautiful needle beckoning the world.
Well, I did that. So Dalton, like, let me ask you, when you were growing up, the CN Tower was making its mark on the city and the sort of the ways that the city's kind of saw itself. What are your childhood memories of the tower?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we'd have to go back. Yeah, go back to the feel-good 70s or 80s, and it was actually, a young Dalton Higgins was dragged to the CN Tower by a techer.
He didn't want to go.
He was very reluctant to go. So it was like actually a field trip. And I think a lot of us, I think we had maybe grade 4, grade 5, we had this ambivalent attitude. We were like, why are we going downtown? What is this? But it was sold to us. It was pitched to us as the world's largest freestanding structure. So we were like, whoa, cool. So we're thinking, when we arrive there now, the teacher's talking about, you have the 7 wonders of the world and, the Great Wall of China, Taj Mahal, and we have our CN Tower. This is how she was selling it to us, right? Yeah. And when we get there, we're like, this is like it's not a 7 wonders of the world, but it's near close. Yeah. Because I just remember looking up at this thing and it just felt so, magical. It was otherworldly, it was like something out of a movie, Yeah, like a Godzilla movie, crashing down big towers. That's what it felt like to us at the time.
One of the nice things about like being across the street from this tower is that, like, I get to see people have that reaction all the time to it. And I think like if I've lived in the city for about 15 years or so, I'm reluctant to call myself a Torontonian. I don't do it. However, when you sort of see that reaction that people are having, I feel like, I'm taking some of this for granted. Like, have you gone back since you were a kid?
No, I don't go back. I think I've gone once in the last 40 years. I don't go there.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, you're like...
It's not, it's a thing that I bring, when I have family or relatives or friends coming in from the United States or elsewhere. Yeah. So it's a touristy thing. It's like, go to CN Tower, go to Niagara Falls, hit, repeat. Yeah. Like, that's it for me. No.
Well, I was going to say, like, Niko, you and I maybe have the same experience, although you're not from Toronto, I'm not from Toronto, but you grew up in the Yukon. So I feel like for you'd have had a certain perspective of what the CN Tower is and what it represented. So do you want to talk to me about that?
Finally, a Yukoner gets to come on the radio and talk about Toronto. I don't know when I first became aware of the CN Tower. It's like it's always existed in my memory.
Yeah.
I'm slightly younger than the tower, but I'm getting there. And so, from an outsider perspective, it was just this tall building, and it's sort of representative of a lot. When you grow up in the Yukon, you kind of don't trust Toronto because, like, what's their angle? They're all the way over there. Do they think they're better than us? Our tallest building in the Yukon, no joke, is the old log cabin skyscraper, which is, it says what it does on the tin. It's just a bunch of sticks. So,
Perfect.
like, I wasn't really sure what to think. And I was kind of terrified of Toronto the first time I came here. And
Yeah.
the first time I ever really came to Toronto, I was in my 30s. And I remember seeing the tower and just being like, oh, I get it now. I totally get it. Like, seeing it, you kind of just like, it does sort of loom over you in this way where you just sort of stare at it in awe. And now, I've lived here for close to 10 years. I don't call myself a Torontonian either.
Yeah.
But when I go away and come back, if I see the tower, I think, oh, okay, I'm home. Like, it's become a symbol for me. And I don't go either. We took my niece there like 3 years ago. Otherwise, like, who's got $50 to go up an elevator? Like, I can do that for free. But, it still represents something to me in a way that I never expected.
I was gonna say, like, I want to zoom out of the Toronto-ness of this for just a moment because, like, the C in CN is for Canadian. It's a Canadian national tower. So, like, there is something about the idea that, like, you and I, Niko, not being Torontonians and not sort of embodying the idea of Torontonians.
Outsiders.
Do you see it as do you see the CN Tower as an icon for the entire country, or is it like a Toronto-specific thing, do you think?
I think it's a Toronto specific thing, and I think that's okay. Like, I think every region in the country should have its own thing. Like, we've got the CN Tower, Calgary's got the Calgary Tower, Montreal's got that place where you can get cheap jeans. Like, every place has its building, and I feel like it's fine. And I think it's sort of, it almost speaks to the perceived hubris of Toronto, of thinking of itself as the capital of the country, which a lot of people that don't live here think is being like, well, the CN Tower belongs to everybody. And like, I think it just belongs to us, and that's okay. And in fact, if we leaned into this is for us, we would probably be better off, and we could make it into something that was more for Toronto than just like, this is for everyone. Like, not really. They can't see it when it changes color.
The thing that you're talking about, I have that because, again, being from Kingston, Ontario, like, there is this thing where sometimes Toronto culture tries to say, we speak for the country. And I go like, whoa, 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 whoa. That is actually not the case at all. So I want to pivot here and start talking about some of the ways that the CN Tower is showing up in culture. And we're going to start with this. All right, this song came out in 1977. That's 1 year after the tower opened. It is called CN Tower. It's by the Toronto punk band The Poles. Michael, I want to talk about this song because there's an interesting contrast there. You've got futurist CN Tower and then these trashy sort of punk aesthetics happening at the same time. When you listen to that song, what's the thing that's popping up for you?
I think it still sounds really exciting. I love the guitar sounds. I love the vocals. But to me, it's really an assertion. And it's very 70s. The architecture of the CN Tower is very 70s. Same with the Ontario Science Centre and Ontario Place. They have that kind of Star Wars, kind of rounded gray brutalist thing that is so 70s to me. And a song like this is, again, and the CN Tower is something that broadcasts to the region and ultimately to the world. And I think that's what a song like this is. It's really claiming Toronto. It's a great Toronto song in ways that there are so very few, especially at that time. I mean, outside of, Murray McLaughlin's Down at the Henry Moore or a few Stompin' Tom songs like To It and At It, the famous Yonge Street song. There are so few. And I think that punk rock, very much like hip hop and country music and folk music, it's at its best when it's rooted in a sense of place in ways that generic rock music, generic pop music is not. And so to me, that's what makes this a great Toronto punk record, a great Toronto record, period. It's full of that vitality and everything else. And I just want to briefly touch on what Toronto and the rest of the country, I feel like Americans claim Statue of Liberty as their own. The French claim Eiffel Tower as their own. Is that a Parisian landmark? Is that a New York landmark?
Yeah. If you're in Nice, you're like, still can claim the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to touch on that.
So that's fair. I'm glad that you brought up the sense of place thing because I think the history of the CN Tower is also really tied up in the mythology of Toronto hip hop in general. And I don't even mean Drake. We'll get to the Drake of it all in just a moment. But first, let's start with this.
My style will lock you down and get your brain stimulated. Decapitating people with my penny jacket. And orchestrated, mad flavor on this paper. And ill behavior, I'll be favoring some skyscrapers. I'll be looking oversized like snipers. Watch my crossfire when my shots ring to bust.
I'm delighted to watch Chocolate. I just gotta point behind him, looking at the CN Tower. That's Choclair, Julie Black. The song is What It Takes. Dalton, what's the significance of this song and this video to what we're talking about right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge. First of all, that video with Choclair and Julie Black, both Juno Award winners.
Yeah.
So the song's a Juno Award winning song. And in the video, it's actually Director X's first video. So Director X is a world famous filmmaker, video director, from Toronto. He's directed videos, who's who of pop
all
stars.
the greats, yeah.
Everybody. Justin Bieber, Jay-Z, Rihanna, it goes on and on. John Mayer. And that's his first video, and it just happens to feature the CN Tower in the backdrop and the skyline. And now the thing is, the thinking behind that, and he's talked about this in interviews, is that in the hip hop, in the rap music genre, a lot of the videos, they tended to be focused around what neighborhood you come from. I want to represent my neighborhood. I live in Scarborough. I live in North York.
Yeah.
Rap. It's sort
Michael
of rap.
Barclay putting up the thumbs up as you said. This.
Right? Yeah. So it's sort of focused around that, or focused around what city you come from. When we think about the whole East Coast, West Coast thing, Tupac versus Biggie, I'm from New York, I'm from LA.
Yeah.
The South now, everybody's claiming the South, Little Baby, DaBaby, all these big rap stars. So to show a landmark, a marker of we're from Toronto, I'm not going to show my neighborhood, I'm not going to show some generic, it's like CN Tower, we're here, Toronto is here. That's what it represented,
I will say, a lot of people outside Toronto and a lot of younger people even in Toronto might not realize that the CN Tower had a nightclub 350 meters up in the sky. It's called Sparkles. That's what it was called. It opened in 1979, rebrands as Horizons in 1992. What was it like to party at the CN Tower, Dalton?
Oh, yeah.
Are you that old?
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me about Sparkles, buddy. Go.
Yeah, exactly. Way back in the Stone Ages. Yeah. So Sparkles, a nightclub. First of all, I don't know how I got in there, as far as ID.
Whoa!
You know what I mean? Like ID. So I tell these stories from the 80s or so. It's just I was there at a club and I'm like, 12. But don't know how I got in there. But it was interesting because the party I was at, it was for ballers and shot callers, like guys that had a lot of money, that were kind of, I guess, hustlers, quote unquote. Yeah, because I don't know how they ended up renting out Sparkles. That must have cost a small fortune, So that's what it was. So it was a lot of jewelry, a lot of fur coats and stuff, and people bawling and shot calling. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Don't know how I ended up there. That's a whole other segment. Yeah.
That is not safe for this radio station. Thank you. Okay, we just heard a couple songs that use the CN Tower as a symbol of aspiration and ambition, but I just want to play a song that uses the tower as a symbol of something very different. Have a listen. From 2004, that is Owen Pallett, and the song is "The CN Tower Belongs to the Dead." Niko, what makes this song a crucial entry into the CN Tower, the canon of CN Tower songs?
I think there's got to be a little bit of cryptic mystery, and it's not terribly cryptic. Like I get that the song is sort of we're speaking about the bones underneath the CN Tower. We're speaking about it being built on the dead. You can imagine we're talking about colonialism and the settlers on this land and all of these ideas, but it is still it's poetic and vague. And Owen is such a beautiful, brilliant songwriter, and it's just I love that a tall structure like this can elicit something that is a little bit cryptic, that elicits some thought in the listener that isn't so pointed or on the nose. It is something a little bit more ethereal, and I think it's just a beautiful sort of notion of we can see your house from up here.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is you can see the dead from up here, and you can see what this is who has been buried here, and who has lived and who has fallen here. And I think there's something kind of beautiful and poignant about that.
I love the obscurity not the obscurity, but the double meaning of that. Like the CN Tower in some eyes could look like a giant tombstone, or that either honors or obscures stories of the past. It could be honoring everybody who's buried underneath it, or it could be, oh, look at this slick modern thing that's helping us ignore the stories of this land. It could be either of those things. That's what makes one of the many things that makes Owen a beautiful writer.
Well, I just love this range of expressions, right? The idea of taking me to the tower all the way to the CN Tower representing, hey, we are from the city, and that's the thing we're going to point to. But also, it's a gigantic needle, and you can at any point project so much onto it, and that's why we're talking about it today. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. Michael Barclay is here, and Niko Stratis is here, and Dalton Higgins is here, and we are celebrating, the 50th anniversary of the CN Tower's opening by looking at all the ways that it has shown up in pop culture over the years. And of course, we can't have this conversation without talking about this guy.
City is pretty when it's dead, just like a flower. What color's the CN Tower? It's blue now, like how I'm feeling about you now.
What color is the CN Tower? It's blue now, like how I'm feeling about you now. That is maybe the quintessential Drake lyric to me at this point. That's Drake, and that is Party Next Door. That collaboration is called CN Tower. Dalton, I'm going to kick it to you. Drake is known for constantly dropping Toronto references. He's very rooted in the city. But CN Tower keeps showing up over and over again throughout his work, obviously on the cover of Views, but also so much of the promotional stuff around Iceman. Talk to me about like this idea of like how Drake uses the CN Tower.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's interesting that we were getting all academic-y and intellectual about the CN Tower, and I think in hip hop, because I write about hip hop, it's like a phallic symbol, a phallic symbol. You know what I mean? That's I'm surprised that didn't come up.
Yeah, that's true. Forgot about that dimension. Yes.
You excuse the hip hop in me,
Yeah.
but one could argue that Drake is almost single-handedly made the responsible for making the CN Tower cool again.
Yeah.
Because when I was teaching a course about Drake in the Weeknd for a couple of years, it's interesting to hear like teenagers and early 20-somethings talking about the CN Tower. I got to be honest, right? Because as Niko and Michael and I are talking about it, the CN Tower is not a cool thing. Like it's not like something that anyways, not in my
Niko
world.
nodding gravely. Like,
Yeah,
yes, it is not a cool thing.
It's not a cool thing. It's not the zeitgeisty, as far as capturing the imagination of people across different walks of life. People in the subway, people talking about the CN Tower. Not really, but I found like my students, they're like talking about the CN Tower and having these cerebral, intellectual debates with CN Tower. I'm like, this is really weird. But as far no, this is very strange. But no thanks to Drake. But yeah, as far as if you look at his artistic output from his music videos to the launch of Iceman to the Views album where he's perched up there on the top of the CN Tower. That's right, and it was meme worthy. It became a meme, and which traveled the globe and went viral.
But I think Caitlin Cronenberg took that photo. Actually, David Cronenberg.
David Cronenberg's daughter took that piece of photography, right? So I think so he, and again, I think he's largely responsible for making it on the tips of our tongues, zeitgeist,
Yeah, like I mean, the idea of the CN Tower becoming a gathering place for people celebrating the release of Iceman, to me is like, this doesn't cohere unless you really think of the CN Tower as like the place to gather while you're celebrating this quintessentially Toronto moment. And that's exactly what it ended up being. We're going to call this the CN Tower's Drake, but also Nirvana era because of this.
Well, the dump's closing. We got time. Okay, we're coming in hot. Oh, too much. Ow! Oh, shit! You all right? You all right? Off of me! Whoa! You pushed me off the tower! What are you, crazy? I thought I was gonna die!
That is truly an already legendary scene from Nirvana the band, the movie. Nirvana the band, the show, the movie, where Matt Johnson and Jay McCarroll skydive from the CN Tower into the Rogers Center because they're trying to promote their show at the Rivoli, but their plans are a little bit foiled because the roof is closing as they're falling. Michael, what goes through your mind as I see you're laughing now as you sort of rewatch that scene, but what goes through your mind as you watch that scene?
I haven't seen that since I saw that movie in the theater on opening night with a packed audience who were just losing
their minds.
I mean, I purposely tried not to know anything about the movie before I saw it because I was fans of them beforehand. Yeah. And so I knew there was a CN Tower plot point. I didn't realize they would open the movie with it. That's your talk about your money shot. Like that's where's the movie going to go from here if you're opening with jumping off the CN Tower?
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard the filmmakers talk about how it's funny how they set out to make the most Toronto movie ever by kind of embracing all the tourist trap cliches of Toronto, like just owning all of that. And it's kind of shocking to me though that part of the reason is it's so underutilized in film and television. I think like there aren't a lot of iconic moments in Canadian film or TV where it appears. Before I came on here, I was looking up. There's a genre film called Canucksploitation that happened in the 70s and 80s where there's like these tax shelter things where rich people gave money to terrible filmmakers to make movies that just had obvious signposts of being Canadian. And there's one, what is it called now? Sorry, it's called High Point, starring Christopher Plummer and Richard Harris, a.k.a. Dumbledore. And Christopher Plummer Sound of Music, Christopher Plummer takes a tumble off the building.
Whoa.
And it's one of only 4 times anyone has actually jumped off the building. That actually made maybe 5 with Nirvana. And so the stuntman did it, and he timed it so his parachute would only open 3 seconds before he hit the ground. So that's how they got the shot.
Wow.
And you can see the clip on YouTube. I'm sure it's better than the entire film.
Yeah.
That's one of the only times you've ever seen it. And then one of the other times I remember was the Norman Jewison film Hurricane, about Hurricane Carter. Stars Denzel Washington, 1999 movie. And if you know the story of Hurricane Carter, it was a bunch of Canadians who were lobbying for his unjust imprisonment.
Yeah.
And so there's a point in the movie where, your American story, boxer, blah, blah, blah. And then it cuts to an establishing shot of Toronto, and you see the CN Tower and the skyline. And the whole theater I was in just like erupted, like, oh my God, yes, finally.
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Niko, we'll give you the last word on this. We've talked about how the CN Tower is like this transformative moment in Canadian history. We also heard about like what it's like to first kind of see it for the first time as a kid. The CN Tower is now 50 years old, right? It's come a long way. It used to be the tallest freestanding structure in the world. It's the 10th tallest now. Things have shifted a little bit. When you look at that tower now, do you think it still represents the same thing that it did 50 years ago? Or, what do you think when you look up at the CN Tower?
I mean, I'm sure I'm wrong, but my view of it is that like, I think like trying to be the tallest building, whatever, like who cares at this point? What I do think is like there's kind of nothing when you go down there, right? Like there's the tower, there's the aquarium, you could go see the Jays if they're there, but like that's kind of it. And there's an opportunity we're talking so much about how it has all these tethers to Toronto history and how it came up at the same time as all these things were changing, but you don't know that when you go there. No one learns the history of this city when you go there. And I think about like going to the Experience Music Project in Seattle, which is close to the Space Needle. Like admittedly, I haven't been since the Kings of Leon put out Aha Shake Heartbreak, so that was a few years ago. But there's a whole thing about like it sort of gets into the broader culture of the city, and I think that like for the CN Tower, as it's growing into its next look, may it have another 50, but I wonder like could we do something interesting with this space that maybe speaks to this city that is rapidly losing a lot of the cultural icons that we sort of love and hold on to? Like is there an opportunity here to do something more than like, do you also want to spend $75 to go to a pretty good aquarium?
I mean, that's the thing that stands out for me as the CN Tower, is that you would think a structure like that would sort of invite a whole bunch of culture to sort of begin around it. A whole bunch of things that would just start to go like, oh, we're next to the CN Tower, and that's a good place to be, culturally speaking, and they would create its own sort of cultural force. I'm not sure that has happened 50 years into its life. Maybe it'll happen in the next 50 years. Okay, before I let you guys go, I'm just hoping for a quick recommendation from each of you before we close this out. Michael Barclay, would you like to start us off, pal? What recommendation do you have?
I just finished watching season 3 of Late Bloomer, which is a show I don't think enough people talk about. There's this great renaissance in Canadian film and TV right now. And in terms of like post Letterkenny, post Kim's Convenience, like very specific community humor and stories. Yeah. It's so well written. It starts off as like an intergenerational kind of sitcom or sitcom, if you will.
Yes.
And
nice.
But it's becoming increasingly dramatic. The season 3 ending was really tragic and shocking, and it's maturing in this beautiful way. I think not enough people are talking about Late Bloomer. It's on Crave. Highly recommend.
I've not yet watched season 3. I'm glad that you brought that up. Dalton Higgins, 30 seconds to you, pal. What do you got?
Yeah, totally. Rafa on Netflix. It's a 4-part docuseries, and I love tennis. Every birthday I go to the Rogers Open, in Toronto and Montreal, and it just sort of taught. Like, first of all, no too much spoiler alerts, but like the guy played like injured like for like the last decade. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
And that
I don't think I realized that.
Yeah, he was like just crazy. Again, no spoiler alerts, but he was injured like most of the time he played.
Yeah.
But he, Novak Djokovic, Roger Federer, that holy trinity, like they're all either retired or on their way out to retirement. It just sort of talks about that relationship amongst the three. So it is definitely worth checking out. Rafa.
I'm sold. And Niko, 30 seconds to you, pal.
My friend Maris Kreisman has a list of books that you can find over at LitHub. The title of the column or the recommendation list is 40 Great New Books You Might Have Missed. She created this partially out of frustration of a certain vice president's book getting a lot of airtime, and just frustrated a lot of good books don't get the same sort of appeal that these famous ones do that everybody kind of hates. Yeah. So she reached out to a lot of writers, myself included. I recommended a book. Yeah. Spoiler alert: my book is also recommended in there to sort of like put all my cards on the table. But it's if you want a summer read list, there it is.
Amazing. Niko Stratis, Michael Barclay, Dalton Higgins, I really appreciate your time and your reflections. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
My name is Elamin. This is Commotion. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.